Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where I trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read the story dramatically back to you or, sometimes yell it at you. Anyway, that's what happens over here on the channel Comicstorian. We catch you up on your favorite books, and today we're going to be doing our final send-off of Jane Foster Thor, the death of mighty Thor, and oh boy, does she go down in an epic fashion. But I want to let you know that this video is brought to you by forhims.com. Hims, a new wellness brand for men. Did you know that 66% of men lose their hair by age 35? Well, I know that Thor Odinson doesn't have to worry about that. The guy is like over 1,000 years old or something crazy, and he still hasn't lost his hair. Now, I don't know exactly what he has done to prevent his own hair loss. Maybe he checks for bald spots, or he's looking to see if his hairline is slowly moving backwards. But you know what he could be possibly doing? Using Hims products. Forhims.com is your one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, and sexual wellness for men. It connects you with real doctors and medical-grade solutions to treat things like hair loss. You can get well-known generic equivalents to name-brand prescriptions that will help you and Odinson possibly keep your hair. You don't have to use snake oil pills or gas station counter supplements. You can use prescription solutions backed by science. No waiting room, no awkward doctor visits. Save hours by going to forhims.com. And if you order right now, my listeners will get a trial month of Hims for just $5 today while supplies last. See their website for full details, but this would cost you hundreds if you went to a doctor or a pharmacy. Go to forhims.com/complete. That's forhims.com/complete for your 4Hims supplement today. When we last left off, things were beginning to prep. It was time for the ending of Mighty Thor. And we saw the ending of War Thor. Now back on Midgard, Jane begins to think about all the good that she is doing. And the forests of Vanaheim, protecting it from the hulked out Roxxon super soldiers. And Jotunheim, fighting back the storm and mountain giants, so many other things. But instead, she is sitting on Midgard, arm wrestling Hercules of Olympus. Herc asks if she's ready to surrender, and Jane tells him that she is ready to tear his little arm from his stubborn torso. For lives depend on it. The two begin, and Jean-Bjorn is thrown between them, and Odinson then asks, "Please do not get Hercules started on his labors. He can go on for centuries about those. We do not have the time. There is no point in measuring egos against Hercules, believe me." Jane tells him that this isn't about egos. This is about Olympus doing the right thing. Herc says that trying to convince Zeus to join their cause will not be an easy task. Sky Father Zeus is just as stubborn as the one-eyed All-Father of Asgard. Herc then grabs Jane's hand and kisses it, stating that there will be at least one god of Olympus there fighting by her side. His name is Hercules, Prince of Power. Later in the healing ward of Asgard, on the bedside of the healing Volstagg, Odinson tells Jane that she found him like this after becoming War Thor again. Jane then asks, "You're telling me that something did this to Volstagg while he was empowered as War Thor?" And Odinson says, "Aye. It's the same thing that had the power to rend his hammer to pieces and to tear Tooth Gnasher's head from his body. The thing that we face is something that Carnilla spoke of with her dying words. So tell me, have you heard of Mangog?" Jane says that it's something that she's only heard of in whispers. She knows that it's something that even the gods fear. Odinson tells her, "Aye, and with good reason. On previous bouts, it has defeated the armies of Asgard all by itself, and it almost brought about Ragnarok through the sheer force of its will. Even the all-seeing Heimdall can't find it, but the Mangog is coming. The gods must be ready." Jane says that when it comes, they will face it together. But until then, there is a war raging across the realms, and Odinson stops her, stating, "Not for you there isn't. The only war that you should be facing is the one raging inside of you." Jane tells him that he shall unhand her, or he will lose his only hand. Odinson then says that he fights for the life of his mortal friend Jane Foster. Does the goddess of thunder still remember her? Last time I saw her, she was in desperate need of medical care. Jane looks down at Mjolnir, and after a moment of hesitation says that there's no time to be sick. This is why the hammer has chosen her. Odinson tells her that it doesn't mean that she has to let it kill her. You may not be afraid to die, but you must not be afraid to live. One god with a hammer will not defeat Meleketh's army, not alone. The world needs a Thor, and you have been one hell of a Thor. You have faced every threat possible. The world needs more than just a Thor, it needs you as Jane Foster. Jane looks at her hammer and tells him, and she throws the hammer into space. She then says that he is right. Jane Foster does have something left to do. A few moments later, in front of Odin's chamber, Jane is beating on the giant doors calling for him. She knows that he can hear her in there. It is time that he does something about the war that they are facing, and if he won't face it, it is time that they had a new All-Father. Or better yet, All-Mother. The War of Realms is not just a war for the elves or the giants, it is a war that affects all of them. As the crowd starts to form, a voice from behind yells to Jane that she and all of these people are under arrest for sedition. Jane tells Kull that it is not sedition. It is common sense, something which too bad he is not the god of. Kull tells her that she is not a senator anymore, she is just a half-dead mortal who does not belong here. Now leave before she is treated as an enemy of Asgard. As the crowd becomes unruly, arguing back against Kull, the doors to Odin's chamber slam open, and he shouts, "Enough!" Odin steps out asking, "Are you gods or petulant children? Either way, cease your wretchling mewling, for the All-Father Odin has returned. Returning long enough to deal with the mess that my brother has made of Asgardia. A god who cannot deal with one troublesome mortal does not deserve to be a god." Jane tells him that she is not the trouble here. His stubbornness will doom every god in, but Odin speaks over her, telling her, "I should never have sent my son into Midgard. I thought stripping him of his powers and leaving him to wallow among the humans would humble him, but the humans are just arrogant, and you are the most arrogant of all." Then a voice calls out from the chamber stating that Jane Foster speaks true. The realms deserve better gods. They are all unworthy. Everyone stops to see Lady Freya weakly walking out, and she continues stating that Jane Foster's words have stirred something inside of her. Now is not the time for slumber, for the War of Realms has begun. They must prove themselves worthy to be called gods. They must be worthy of her, of the bold and valiant Lady Jane of Midgard. Come stand beside her so that they might. But as everyone looks back, they see Jane has collapsed to the floor. Outside of the Golden Gate, Heimdall says that so it begins. Over the eons, these all-seeing eyes have watched worlds crumble and galaxies burn. But what comes next will be difficult to watch. Suddenly there's a loud thoom and Mangog lands before him stating, "Asgard at last! Tell all the gods in heaven that Mangog has arrived to send them to hell!" A short while after the arrival of Mangog, Jane begins to wake back up and she asks where is she. She looks around seeing herself in a hospital bed, and Odin's son tells her that she is not on Asgard anymore. She is where she belongs. Jane asks what happened, and Odin's son says that she collapsed. He had alerted Senator Solomon, and Rosalind tells her that she called in everyone that she could. Jane turns to see Sam Wilson and Stephen Strange, and Sam tells her that she needs to listen to what they have to say. Dr. Strange tells her that she should consider this an intervention. On behalf of the people who love and respect her, they refuse to watch her murder herself. Odin's son then says that he knows that it is difficult to let go of being Thor. In the name of all the gods does he know that. But that is what must happen here today. Jane asks what of Asgard, and Rosalind stops her, stating that it is not of her concern. Kicking cancer's ass is all that she needs to worry about. Believe her when she says that Asgard will be fine without her. Meanwhile, back at the Rainbow Bridge, Heimdall thrusts his sword into Mangog's chest, telling him, "Mangog will be stopped, so swears Heimdall, the all-seeing." Mangog grabs Heimdall, slamming him into the ground, breaking his sword in half. He then picks him back up, and part of the sword is still sticking out of his chest as he tells Heimdall, "You see very little for an all-seeing god. Tell me, mighty Heimdall, did you foresee this?" Mangog pushes Heimdall's head against the broken blade. Also at this time, Kull runs out with his guards, shouting to trigger the Bifrost and send the beast somewhere. Mangog begins punching into the bridge, asking, "Did you think that you could just send me away? Mangog isn't going anywhere, and neither are you." With one last hit, the bridge begins to shatter. Back on Earth, though, Dr. Strange begins to examine Jane, and she tells him, "Remember, no magical cures." And Dr. Strange says that he understands. Once Dr. Strange is done, he says that when this all began a year ago, her initial cancer treatments were showing positivity. It was stage 1 breast cancer, but the treatments were removing the cancerous cells. And then something changed. Suddenly, the treatments were ineffective and the cancer metastasized and went from stage 1 to stage 2 and then to 4. What changed is that she found a magic hammer on a moon. The more she saved the worlds as goddess of thunder, the more she was killing herself. The magical transformation purges the chemotherapy from her system while leaving behind the actual cancer itself. If she was to transform even one more time, Dr. Foster, are you even listening? Jane's eyes begin to stare at the hammer, which is floating in the room with them. Odinson shouts at the hammer, telling it to go away. "Can't you see that you're killing her?" And Jane, while looking at the hammer, quietly says that she can hear it. The Mangog has come. Back on Asgard, Freya watches the destruction, stating that no matter how many soldiers they throw at it, the Mangog will keep coming. They must release their greatest weapon. They must release the Destroyer. Moments later, back at the gates, Mangog walks through yelling for Odin to stop hiding behind his pathetic armies and face your demise. Freya, through the destroyer, tells him the All-Father isn't listening. It's the All-Mother who will be his destroyer today. With that, she releases the destroyer's destructive blast right into his chest. But while the fight for Asgard continues, Jane gets up from her bed, walking over to the hammer. Dr. Strange tells her that if she is to change even one more time, there will be no coming back. Jane Foster will die. Sam yells that they have to keep the hammer away from her, and Rosalind says no. It's her life. Jane's the one who will make the decision to live or die. Back on Asgard, the fire spreads as the destroyer tries to defeat Mangog. But then he grabs a hold of the destroyer, stating that he can see the weakness in this. The goddess who controls it is weary. Recovering from a great illness, you should have stayed in bed. He bites down on the head of the destroyer, ripping it off of its own shoulders. Mangog then throws the destroyer's body into the building, shouting to Odin that he is coming for him. He will come at him just as he came to slew the race that gave birth to him. He will slay every god on Asgard and drown them in their own blood. Back in the hospital, though, Jane reaches for the hammer and then stops. She looks at Odinson, telling him that they are all soldiers now, soldiers in the War of the Realms. Make sure that their side doesn't lose. Odin, however, sits on his throne, imagining what the sight will look like the moment that Mangog makes his way in. He thinks even gods don't live forever. Even all-fathers die. If today is that day, then so be it, though I have one regret. I wish at long last that I could have told my son, my heir, what he truly. But Odinson stops him, telling him, that'll have to wait, old man. Right now we have a realm to preserve, gods to save and Mangog to kill. We'll do so with all of the thunder blood in our bodies and all of the boar-damned hell that we can muster. Mangog begins to claw his way into the throne room, yelling, at last! Now falls Asgard! Now death comes for the gods! Mangog quickly grabs Odinson, slamming him into the ground, and then he punches Odin away as he tries to stab into him. Odinson then brings down his axe, and as he gets close, Mangog smacks him so hard that he is launched into space. Odin gets back up, and as he looks up, he sees Mangog holding his broken throne over his head, telling him, your kingdom lies in ruins, and now so will you. Mangog throws the throne down onto Odin's body, and then Odin's son, riding Toothgrinder, flies back and shouting for his father. Toothgrinder rams into Mangog, sending him down into the lower levels, but back up top, Odin begins to rise. He says that Mangog doesn't hit as hard as he remembers. Barely felt that. He was a fool to give in to fear. If death comes to Asgard, so be it, and what a glorious death it shall be. As Odin and his son battle against Mangog, all Freya can do is watch as the walls of their once great city fall. Freya talks to herself, stating that there must be something that can be done, something that can stop Mangog. But a voice tells her that all she can do is run, nothing will stop him. Mother. Freya turns back to see Loki, and he says that he's here to help with that. He is the Sorcerer Supreme of Midgard now. He can send her far enough away from Mangog, and without saying a word, Freya slaps him across the face, stating, how dare you show your face around here? Come to bury another poisoned dagger into my back? Loki looks at her. Mother. And Freya yells, you lost all rights to call me that. He sincerely looks at Freya, asking, if I wanted that dagger to kill you, do you think that you would be standing here instead of Valhalla? Meleketh wanted Asgard in the hands of Odin, not you. He knew that the Allfather would keep it isolated and out of his War of Realms. Meleketh and his cabal were determined to see you dead. I knew that you would never make that choice willingly, so I made it for you. But if you don't wish for my help, I understand. No god in all of the heavens can do anything to stop Mangog, not the Allfather, not the Odin son, and not you. There are some things that you just can't save. Goodbye, Lady Freya. Over in the control room, both Odin and Odinson are thrown into it, and Mangog lands, stating, you aren't the Thor that I remember, or the Allfather for that, but you both are still rather stubborn when it comes to dying. Odinson tells him that they killed him once before and they'll do it again. Mangog laughs, grabbing the control panel for Asgard and begins to rip it apart, causing the floating city to start speeding towards the sun. Mangog asks, can you hear that? The screams of the poor damned souls calling out across the cosmos. Mangog then grabs Odin and Odinson in his hands and Freya with his tail, telling them, I will answer your prayers though. Your prayers for death! Back on Earth, Jane begins to walk around the hospital and overhears Rosalind speaking to Alpha Flight. Rosalind tells him, yeah, I know my security clearance expired when S.H.I.E.L.D. went under, but think of this as an anonymous tip. You should be able to locate Asgard, right? Well, you need to look. Odinson left like a goat out of hell, and I can't call the Bifrost. Yeah, it's out near Saturn, a big golden city floating out in space. You can't miss it. What do you mean it's not there? Of course it's there. It's passing Mars? Why would it? Wait, it's on a course for what? Pass me through to the Avengers. Jane doesn't say a word as she heads to her room and begins to look through her paperwork. She looks at her hand and says that she should have beaten this cancer. And then she looks out the window to see her hammer floating there. She waits, and then she grabs it by the handle, and she sees everything that is happening to Asgard. She hears Mangog stating the death of a god, and there is nothing in the cosmos like that feeling. Tell him, do you feel it too? Or should he? There's suddenly a booming crackoon as Jane appears before Mangard and she tells him, you should take your filthy hands off those gods and get ready to face the fury of Thor. After a few exchanges of blows, Jane hits Mangog with a thunderous crack in his mouth. The force from her blow sends Mangog crashing into the golden statue of Odin, and as he hits it, Jane calls down the lightning to melt the statue over him. She lands, breathing heavy from the hit, and says that she fought the Destroyer. She fought the Allfather himself, and she has never felt such rage. Odin gets up stating that it won't stop him for long. Nothing can stop the Mangog, not even death, not even our deaths. Jane tells him that it'll hold him long enough. Asgard is flying into the sun. He and the others need to evacuate at once. Freya then walks up, stating, and leave you to face Mangog alone? Nay. Jane looks around and the warriors of Asgard are routed. The Rainbow Bridge is shattered. The Allfather is leaking like a one-eyed sieve, and Thor is their only hope. But that's when Odin's son shouts, no! You shouldn't be here! What did you do? You've killed yourself! And Odin then asks, what is he going on about? But at that moment, Mangog breaks free of the melted gold, and Jane yells that they must leave now. The world needs more than just one Thor. They need gods that they can believe in. Tell the gods that it is time to earn the gift that they've all been given. As Jane finishes, Mangog lunges and tackling her through the ground, telling Jane that she fights for the gods. But she herself isn't entirely a god, is she? Jane struggles to push him off, stating that she may not be a god, but he is entirely a monster. Mangog picks her up, throwing her into a wall, stating that she has hated them. Deep down in your heart, you know that they deserve this. After being punched into the air, Mangog tells her, why not just let me kill them? It is why I exist, now stand aside. Jane rockets back, shouting she cannot allow that. And as she gets close, Mangog takes a slab of stone, slamming it down onto Jane, pinning her to the ground. Mangog then asks, why throw your life away? You would sacrifice yourself 1,000 times, and things would still never change. Why would you die for the gods? Jane thinks about all the things in her life, and she bursts out from underneath the slab, punching into Mangog, telling him that she dies not for them, but for love. He would die not, but hate. That is why he will always lose. With all of the strength that Jane can muster, she throws Mangog headfirst into the sun. Everyone watches, and Freya says that she's done it. They are saved. The gods, they bless Thor. Odin's son quietly says that they have no idea what she's done. She's doomed herself. They have to. But before he could finish, Mangog rockets back towards Jane, screaming and asking, you yearn to be a god? Very well. You can die like one. Jane tries to free her arm, telling him that was the plan, but she will not die alone. And she punches Mangog's face. Odinson leaps out, cutting off his tail, yelling, I, nor slay alone either. Jane yells that he needs to get out of here. They're getting close to the sun. And Mangog roars, shouting that nothing can stop Mangog. No gods in heaven or hells. No all-fathers or all-mothers. No magic, no thunder, no Thor. Mangog knocks Jane back down to the ground, and as she gets back up, she grabs a chain, wrapping it around Mjolnir. She takes that chain, and she throws it around Mangog, stating, these chains are forged by dwarves to bind the monster wolf Fenris. Let's see how they fit a Mangog. He tries to struggle through the chains, yelling that he is the only thing that can save this universe from divine ruin. And Jane tells him that in the end, it was not a god. 'Twas a mortal named Jane, a woman who gave up everything in order to stop him. Remember that. Fly true, my friend. Fly like the mighty storm that you are. Jane then takes the hammer and throws it into the sky, and the hammer shoots off into the sun's core. Odinson shouts, asking, what did you just do? You threw the hammer into the sun. You're killing Mjolnir. You just killed yourself. She begins to take off her helmet, telling him she knows. She knows she won't survive another transformation. She knows exactly what she has done. Odinson says that they could still get her to the healers. We could still save you. And Jane stops him, telling him that there isn't time for that. Not that it would matter. Let them not waste what little time they have. And Odinson says he doesn't know what to say. Jane holds his face and tells him, say goodbye. As they begin to kiss, Jane's body begins to revert back to its original form. And as she does, Asgard begins to burn and fall apart. Just then, Asgard explodes for all to see, with Freya stepping forward, tears running down her face. She says perhaps there is still a chance that they could have made it out. Odin hangs his head, telling her that she feels the same as he does, the chill of death. And then there's a loud thoom hitting the moon's surface. As the dust settles, Odinson sits there, holding Jane's lifeless body. As traces of Mangog fade, the gods begin to gather around the woman who was their Thor, Jane. Freya shouts that this is not how it ends. Where are the boar-damned healers? As Odin's son runs over to her, Odin stares out for a moment before scoffing and walking off to disappear. Sif asks Heimdall if he is truly, and Heimdall tells her that even blindfolded he can see the truth. He's afraid that it is too late, dear sister, she has gone. The goddess of thunder is dead. May she find a way without haste to the halls of the honored slain. Meanwhile, at the gates of Valhalla, a younger, healthier Jane wanders through the fog asking if anyone's there. As she looks up at the gates, she says that this is Valhalla. That means that she's... But before she could even finish the sentence, Odin shouts, "You! It was you all along! You're the one who stole the hammer, robbing my son of his birthright, his very name. You've also been the source of all of my troubles for months, turned all of Asgard against me." Jane tells him actually he did that all by himself. And without even acknowledging it, Odin continues shouting that she dared lay her hands and hammer against him, the Holy Allfather, in personal combat. And you even defeated Mangog when no one else in the heavens could stand his wrath you fought on. So much so that it cost you your life. Everyone that I know and love would be dead if it was not for you. My wife, my son, even I myself. You fought until your very last breath to save the gods of Asgard. It was a glorious death. That is why you, Jane Foster of Midgard, have earned your place among the most venerated of the fallen warriors. Your eternal reward awaits. Welcome to Valhalla, mighty Thor. As the gates of Valhalla open, she looks in and sees the beautiful scene of peace. But rather than walk towards it, she stands there. Odin asks why she hesitates. A great feast is about to begin in your honor. Be not afraid. You have nothing more to fear from me or anyone else ever again. As Odin places his hand on Jane, she looks at him and says that she wasn't ready. She wasn't ready to die. Back on the moon, the healers surround Jane's body, stating that it is of no use. There is still no pulse. Their spells have no effect on her. Sif looks up and at the gathering storm and says that she's never quite seen a stellar squall like this. Heimdall tells her that even when he had eyes, he never beheld such a storm, but he has heard tell of one. The god Tempest, the mother's storm, which means the legends must be true. The ancient superstorm truly was the heart of Mjolnir. With the hammer now gone, the Tempest has been unleashed, and it would appear to be angry, and 'tis not the only one. Across him, Odin's son slams his axe into the ground, shouting in anger, calling down to the Mother Storm, telling it to show him why they call her the god Tempest. Freya runs up and tells him to calm thyself. She knows what he is trying to do. He cannot channel such a storm. It is too strong, it would. But before she could finish, there's a loud crack-coom as Odin's son is struck by lightning. He shouts to everyone to get away from Jane. She cannot be dead. She was the mighty Thor. She has thunder in her veins. Using the power of the Mother Storm, Odin's son begins to try and channel its power into Jane to bring her back. And back at the gates of Valhalla, Odin asks Jane, why is she waiting? You have never tasted meals as what awaits you, and believe me, it's worth whatever agonies you have suffered. Jane stares through the gate, stating that she knows that she should want to, but there's something holding her back. Almost like, but before she could say another word, she screams out in pain. Back on the moon, Odin's son continues pouring the power of the Mother Storm into Jane, telling everyone to stand back. He will bring her back. And as Odin's son gives another pulse of lightning, Jane screams out in pain again. Odin then asks, how is she under attack in the land of the dead? Who is responsible for this blasphemy? As Jane rolls over, Odin says that he sees it now, even from across the void. It's the god Tempest that clings to you. Over on the moon, Odin's son is pumping another pulse of energy, and the healers tell him that there is still no pulse. She is simply, but Odin's son yells to get away from her. The healer then states that he must stop this. His arm is melting. Not even he can control such power. Odin's son weakly tells them to get back, but then a hand reaches out to Odin's son, telling him that they speak the truth. Odin tells him that he cannot control the powers of the god Tempest. No god ever could, but luckily for Lady Jane, there's more than one of them. Back at the gates, Jane looks through, debating what she should do, and over on the moon, Odin and Odin's son together gather their strength, channeling it into Jane. Odin's son asks if she's truly gone, and Odin tells him that she is standing at the gates of Valhalla, refusing to cross over. She's convinced her story hasn't ended, so let us see if she is right. In the name of Asgard, in the name of Thor. With one final stroke of lightning, there is a coom, and the entire side of the moon lights up as the smoke begins to clear. Everyone watches and they see a small crackle of lightning from Jane's eyes. Just then they open as she gasps for air. And a few days later, on old Asgard, Odin's son asks what she thinks. Jane looks around at the people rebuilding the land, stating that it is pretty broken. It's a perfect home for them. Odin's son tells her nay, not for her. This is a land where he was born, but for her. She's going back to Midgard, to the hospital where she belongs. Jane laughs, telling him to relax. This is just a visit. Believe it or not, she's finally being a good patient. As the two look up at the sun, Odin's son says that it's a worthy death for Mjolnir. It's a worthy death for mighty Thor. Jane looks at him and says that Thors can't die, son of Odin. Not now. Not ever. That's why I came. Odin's son sighs and tells her, without Mjolnir no more will he ever be the unworthy prince of Asgard. The age of Thor has ended. Jane then tells Odin's son to hold out his hand, and as he does, he feels something heavy hit it, and he asks what. He looks and sees a small fragment of the hammer, and as he struggles to hold it back up, he says that it is such a small piece. That tells him that he could never lift the hammer. He is still not. But Jane stops him and tells him that the hammer made her the Thunderer, but not him. He did it all by himself, and though she was honored to carry the mantle, it is time for him to reclaim it. There must always be a Thor, now and once again, and it must be him. She showed everyone what she could do with the hammer in her hand, and now it's time for him to show everyone what he can do without it. Odin's son looks at the fragment and says that he has a few ideas. Gods, it would be great to fly again. He hugs Jane, telling her that he loves her, and that she is more than a god than he could ever be. Jane hugs him back, stating that he has got more humanity than most humans. Odin's son turns back, shouting, "Where are those dwarves? Where are those blacksmiths?" She smiles and walks to the edge of old Asgard and says, "Thors and their hammers." She gets it now. She's gonna miss flying too. Though the skies themselves aren't going anywhere. And neither is she. And there you have it. The finale to Jane Foster, Mighty Thor. She's living on, and Odin's son is now back to just being Thor. Thor Odinson, or just Thor, I don't know, Blondie with a hammer. That's what I call him. Hey, I mean, whatever. Anyways, much as I enjoyed Jane Foster Thor, I was kind of feeling the lack of Odin's son. I wanted him back with his hammer, and the new book is really good. But let me know in the comments down below what you truly thought about Jane Foster now that her run is done. I know she got a lot of hate at the beginning, and a lot of people were like, what's wrong with Marvel? I'll tell you what's wrong with Marvel. They wrote one hell of a Thor storyline involving Mighty Thor. That's not a problem. And it went back to normal. I told you all that it was going to do this. It's like all you people that were complaining about the death of Wolverine. He's back. And he didn't even really go. He just got really old and grumpy. That's all he did. Old man Logan was Logan. All you whiners and complainers. I'll see you next time. Please subscribe.